This is the East Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in another edition of the East Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, breaking down Districts 5 and 6 week in, week out in the state of Idaho. Brandon Baney, as always, joined by Sean Kane. Sean, what's up?
Hey, man, it's been a lot going on. I always start with these really intriguing monologues, right? But, everyone's like, why aren't we talking tennis? And it's not the season yet, but, the season for pros has started, the Australian Open. And man, there was a doozy of a match last night. You had Andy Murray, who's came back from a hip surgery, probably never was going to play again, won in 5 sets over a young Australian guy. And it ended at 4:00 in the morning. So the tennis and all at 4:00 in the morning. So now there's this big question whether or not they should, when is it, too late to start a match, and should they be playing to 4:00 in the morning? But with all that being said, Rafa Nadal played. He lost early in the first round, but he had a really good quote, which I've kind of seen this a lot this week in basketball. Is he was injured and he goes, whatever, I have an injury and that's it and whatever. But at the end of the day, in whatever sport you're playing, the essence of the sport is you got to take your chances and try to finish the game, and just take your chances. And that's what we've kind of been seeing this week in East Idaho is people taking their chances, and, they might not win, but, they're not giving up and they're taking their shots, like literally on the court.
I was wondering how you were going to tie that in, but I should have known. You're a pro. So, of course, yeah, you brought it right back around. What a night. So a little behind the scenes. We usually record on Wednesdays, but yesterday I was not feeling well, and honestly, I'm still kind of not, which is why I'm very casually dressed in my Lapway Wildcats hoodie. But so I said, Sean, can we record tomorrow? And as we're talking about, what we're going to talk about, Sean, you were like, yeah, there's actually some pretty big games like on the Wednesday night schedule. So yeah, maybe we should wait until those are done. So then we have more to talk about. And I completely agree. And to me, the biggest matchup, not just in East Idaho, but to me, the biggest matchup in the entire state last night was in girls hoops, Thunder Ridge at Rigby. Finally, we get to see these two juggernauts play. Thunder Ridge walks away with the 62-49 victory to remain undefeated on the year. They're now 18-0, 3-0 in conference. Rigby is 15-3 and 2-1 in conference. And Sean, you watched this game last night. What were your takeaways?
Well, my takeaway is you've got just two really, really good games. You got two really good teams. But the thing about Thunder Ridge is, which I didn't notice before until last night, was their ability to spread the court and open it up and just find the holes in the defense is amazing. And, Aspen Caldwell had 31 points. I mean, almost unstoppable, but, what she, doesn't do in points, she's good at facilitating and get the ball to other players. And if Aspen Caldwell scores 31 points in a game, that's just a hard team to play. At halftime, it was 18. Rigby was 18. Thunder Ridge was 30. And then Rigby had the highest scoring quarter of the third quarter. They scored 21 points, kind of cut it in, but just could never take them down. But I will say this about Rigby. Cambry Barber is a phenomenal player. And that's kind of where I was thinking of Nadal. Like, she is all over the court. She's trying to block shots. She's on the ground. And my insider info said she got into foul trouble early. So by the end of the third quarter, she already had 4 fouls, and that that played a big role in it because she just plays aggressive. She goes out there and does what you want as a coach. And, some people said if she didn't get in early foul trouble because she had to come out quite a bit because of the fouls, it might have been a little closer. But, the good news is, well, I don't know if it's good news, but they'll meet in a week's time. They're going to do it again at Thunder Ridge. But, yeah, two just really good teams, and you've got a lot of star power. And I just think Thunder Ridge, you've just got to look at how they open up the floor, and their transition, how they play in transition is as good as any team I've seen this year.
Yeah. So some takeaways from the game that I saw. You're right. The first quarter was tight. It was 10-8 Thunder after one quarter. And then Thunder outscores Rigby 20-10 in the second quarter. And that lead that they had bankrolled at halftime kind of sustained them through the second half, where Rigby would go on a run and cut it to 7, and then Thunder would get, put it back out to double digits. And so Rigby could never climb that mountain all the way because they were down by 12 at halftime. And so that to me was really important. That second quarter to me is where things really swung. The other thing I've noticed is that both of these teams have really good guard play. Like we know Thunder Ridge, right? With Aspen Caldwell and Kennedy Stenquist and
Marley Spencer.
Yeah, Marley Spencer. That's a 3-headed monster. They can all handle the ball. They all apply pressure defensively too, and make it a nightmare for opposing guards that want to try and bring the ball up the floor. And you talked about Rigby is built more from the inside out, right? With Cambry Barber and Miley Graham. They both are 6 feet tall, but Rigby's got some very underrated guards as well. When you look at Kylie Danzy, and then also their point guard, Abby Scott, I think is really underrated. So these two teams to me are pretty even. Thunder obviously gets the win, and so they should be a notch ahead of Rigby. But I like, and we've talked about this for weeks, I like both of these teams to get to state. Whoever takes second has to win a play-in game. I think that's a slam dunk. You can lock it in. And then I think once both of these teams get to state, because of their guard play, both teams are capable of getting on a run and winning it.
Yeah, and in talking to Thunder Ridge's AD Travis Hobson about it, he was, he's like trying to get me to run the numbers. Like, I know how Max Preps works. Yes, sir. Let me get my slide rule out. And and we're just kind of looking at it and talking about it. And it's, they might end up having to play on the same half of the bracket, but I would hopefully not. So that's kind of one thing to think about as far as that goes, is whoever, I feel pretty confident whoever takes second is probably going to make it to state, whoever they play, because they're just two really good teams. The common opponent they kind of have was Hawaii, and Thunder Ridge beat them, and Rigby played them pretty close but didn't come away with the win. So they do kind of one comparable Boise team. So man, it'll be interesting to see kind of how it pans out at the end, and where they'll be in that bracket is kind of what I'm thinking. But it was funny, he was talking to him, the coach is like, they're just kind of talking like, this game isn't, these games are important, but it's really important to win districts. And Travis Hobson's like, no, wait a minute, stop the engines. You got to win your regular season games, because the district play doesn't count towards your max prep ranking. So
right,
in essence, your regular season games are much more important as far as the ranking, right? Obviously you have to win districts or take second or whatever to get to state, but it makes that regular season and these matchups so exciting, and they weigh heavy because of where that will pan out at the end.
Yeah, I will tell you, looking at the Max Prep rankings right now as they stand in for 5A, I think the data is there. When you get down to like the 1A level, there's a ton of schools that like aren't reporting scores, that it's not being regulated very well. So the smaller you get, the more wonky the numbers are, but 5A is pretty steady in how they report their scores. Thunder Ridge is 1 right now. Coeur d'Alene is 2. Lake City is 3. Rigby is 4. How about that? Not a single Boise team in the top 4. Hawaii is the highest at 5, and then Boise is 6. So both of these second place teams from the North and the East have to win play-in games, essentially against the 5th and 6th place teams from Boise. I think Boise only gets 4 teams in. You're going to have 2 from the North, 2 from the East, 4 from Boise. And if it holds, you're looking at Thunder and Rigby on the same side of the bracket, possibly for the semis.
Yeah, and I was talking to people up north, because that conference is going to kind of be the same thing with those two teams. Who comes away with that, but winning those regular season games are going to be so important in your final ranking. You don't want to. I mean, I've never heard a coach, "Yeah, we'd just love to go play this team for the 5th time." You know what I mean? That's not what you want. So it's just real exciting, and I guess that's the one thing I like about Max Preps, is it makes the regular season very exciting, and just makes it, it's kind of do or die when it gets down to it. Whatever your record is great, but sometimes these important games, as far as that ranking go, just make it even more intriguing.
Yeah, so that was a good opening salvo between these two teams. Can't wait for the rematch in Idaho Falls in a week, as you said. The next biggest game was from last night. We were talking about it all year long. Shelley, top team in 4A, like easily. It's Shelley. Who's going to beat them? So far, Pocatello, the only team that had, right? And that was a non-conference game until last night. The Blackfoot Broncos, I'm telling you, Coach Odom does such a great job with those girls. They lost almost everybody from last year's team, like almost everybody. They bring back Marley Piper, SB Vergara, a couple others, but it is, for the most part, a new cast of characters at Blackfoot this year. And when you look at their overall record, boy, they're 9-8. That's not that great, but they have played a gauntlet of a schedule, and they are very quietly 6-1 in league play. And it finally all came to fruition last night after losing to Shelley by 8 the first time this year in December. They beat Shelley by 8 last night, 58-46. What a win for the Broncos.
Yeah, and I mean, go back and check the replay. I was like hoping we could bring it up. I'm pretty sure I said after watching Blackfoot beat Skyline that I'm like, you got to watch out for Blackfoot. They're like kind of just hovering there, and sure enough, the Russets come down to Bronco country, and they get bucked off real quickly. And it was interesting. You mentioned Marley Piper. She had 18 points, but they had a sophomore, Addie Tanner. She went 3 for 4 from the 3-point line, and they made a lot of threes. They made 6, well, not a ton, but they made 6 threes. That's, you make 6 3-pointers, that can be the difference. And we all know that that's a good shooting team, but I mean, watch out. Essentially they're in first in the conference. Well, I guess they'd be tied, right, with Shelley, each with one loss, because they each beat each other once. So now they're 1-1. So the last few games are going to be important to get that number 1 seed in districts. But nice job by the Broncos to come out, and everyone's kind of been on a high for the Shelley team, which they should be. That they're a great team, nothing to take away there, but that's why the regular season's so important and exciting.
And I should mention, this league gets 2 bids to state, and that's it. No play-in game, nothing. It's top 2 or bust. So when you look at the
Skyline,
league, yes, when you look at the league standings, Shelley and Blackfoot are now both 6-1, and then you have Hillcrest, Idaho Falls, and Skyline all at 3-4, and all 3 of those teams are capable of beating a Blackfoot, beating a Shelley. I mean, the games this year have been fairly close. Skyline lost to Hillcrest by 8, 59-51. They also beat Hillcrest by 2. Skyline lost to Blackfoot by 9. They'll play Blackfoot again. Skyline lost to Shelley by 2 in overtime. That was the game that you and I were at, Sean, broadcasting. So, I mean, it's there. They've beaten Idaho Falls. They've lost to Idaho Falls. I mean, this league is up and down. There's just like, I don't know. Whoever can play the most consistently at districts is going to have a great shot. So
yeah, I mean, good thing they have Ty Shippen to do the brackets, because you might have to do a coin flip or something to separate those, because everyone's going to have kind of a interesting record as far as the conference, so how do you get your seed and the head-to-heads? It's going to be crazy. And we still got, all the games probably left for most of those teams are conference games. So, I mean, it'll be a race. It'll be probably one of the most intriguing conference tournaments, I think, in any, not in any division, but definitely in 4A.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the most intriguing for sure in 4A girls basketball. When you talk about moving on, now we're going to dip down to 3A basketball. Oh, I will mention real quick, Skyline still does play both Shelley and Blackfoot one time. So I don't know who after last year, I never count out Skyline. So
and Skyline is that's a team too that at any given night could beat those teams. I've seen pretty much all those teams live at this point, and they all have, stars, and a lot of times it comes down to what's that third player or that fourth player who's going to step up and kind of bring you home. So that will kind of be, I kind of think, the key for some of those teams. What's the other person? We know this person's good. Who's going to step up?
Yeah, that's who the third and fourth bananas, so to speak,
Yeah.
in the bunch. Okay, let's take a look at 3A basketball now, and we're going to switch over to boys basketball for the first time, where amazingly, Sean, still nobody has played a single conference game because you've got a 3-team District 6, Teton, Sugar-Salem, South Fremont, and a 3-team District 5, Snake River, Marsh Valley, American Falls. All of them are 0-0 in league play. Can we please get to some conference action? Well, we've had a lot of cross-pollination, right? And I've talked about this in the past. I don't know why District 5 and 6 don't just combine for one big league. Yeah. Because then instead of 1 1/4 bids, maybe you'd get 2.5 or something. I don't know. But they all play each other anyways. And the big game was last night on IdahoSports.com in boys basketball. Marsh Valley went to Sugar-Salem, and the Diggers held serve at home, winning 70-58. A nice 12-point win there. Marsh Valley last Thursday played Teton and lost by 6. So Teton has swept the season series with Marsh Valley, winning by 5 and 6 points respectively. Sugar has lost to Marsh Valley, and then they beat Marsh Valley last night. And then you've got Snake River, who very quietly is just kind of going about their business. They're 11-4. Snake River this year lost to Sugar, still plays Sugar once. They lost to Teton by 5 in overtime. And they still play Teton one more time. So everybody's kind of beating up on each other. Bottom line is only the district champ from District 5 and 6 are guaranteed to get to state. And then the 2 second-place teams play each other in a play-in game. And then the winner of that still has to play yet another play-in game. So among these 4, Teton, Sugar, Marsh Valley, Snake River, who's got the best chance of?
I mean, oh boy, I think Teton and Sugar are right now kind of a toss up to me. I kind of, if you had to give me, if you said last night you're going to pick, I would have picked Marsh Valley, just by, from the hip. But to see Sugar beat Marsh Valley kind of opens some eyes to me. So, I kind of would put Sugar at the top, just right now because of that. And, Snake River is just, it'll be interesting when Snake River plays conference to kind of see where they're at, because they lost a close game to Sugar too, like you said, and a close game in overtime to Teton. So and just close. I don't know. I don't know. Sugar's kind of what we'd say has the pedigree. They've been there.
Right.
They're kind of returning. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't have a surefire answer for you right now.
I think I'd rank the teams this way. Sugar and Marsh Valley are the ones with the recent pedigree, right? Sugar won 3 titles in a 4-year span, and then there was a 2-year kind of hiatus where they were just average. And then Marsh Valley, of course, won the 3A championship 2 years ago, got to state last year. But to me, Teton's won because they can beat you a number of different ways. They've got the Hoosevelts, right? Thomas and Jerem. But they've also got, Brody Hess, who is a capable scorer of the basketball. They've got more tools in the toolbox to me. I would put actually Sugar second because they're so well coached. Tyler Freeman gets the most out of his guys every single game. And so Sugar doesn't really have the one guy where you're like, okay, yeah, this is their stud. This is their crew Clark, so to speak. They've got a lot of complementary pieces, and they really play well together as a team. Third, I would say, is Snake River. Snake River's really top heavy, right? They've got some dudes that can ball. Marcus Coombs, Luke Higginson, Danny Ray, all phenomenal players, but they don't have the depth that some of the other teams have. And then I would put Marsh Valley fourth, mostly because it's a new group of guys. I mean, they don't have much coming back from last year in terms of, big varsity contributors, with the exception of Stanton Howell, right? Stanton Howell's kind of the one constant for Marsh Valley, but it's a lot of guys, Ezra Godfrey, Alex Vaughn. They've got Bradley Belknap, all kind of complimentary players in years past, and now they're asking to be, a starter and a key guy. And I think they're still adjusting to that a little bit, but that's kind of how I see it right now. Check back in 2 weeks. It'll probably be the exact opposite, right?
That might be, I think, you'll have to see what happens. I mean, when you get the small conferences, you all know each other, what's going to happen, but that's one thing, and going out and play the game's another thing. So I think, literally, we're just going to have to see what happens in the games.
Yeah.
Conference games, so we got to wait.
If you want more confusion and more headaches, let's go to 2A basketball, boys basketball, and let's start in the Nuclear Conference, District 6. Right now, kind of the opening blow was delivered. So conference play started last week, and West Jefferson went on the road to North Fremont, a team that has lost, I think, 2 games, period, in the 2 years prior to this year. And they get a win at North Fremont, 55-48. What a signature breakthrough win for West Jefferson. They follow that up with a tight loss at home on Saturday to Firth by a final of 58-46. But then they bounce back last night, Sean, and beat Ryrie, the preseason favorite, 59-50. So currently you've got Firth at 2-0 in the league and 10-4 overall. Ryrie and West J are both 2-1 in league. West J right now in second because of the head-to-head win over Ryrie. Ryrie's got the better overall record, 11-2. West J's 8-5, but West J played a very challenging schedule. They played Teton twice this year, and lost both of those games. They went and played 4A and 3A schools at the Parma tournament. So to me, West J and Firth look really good. West J in particular, Coach Kelvin Croce doing a phenomenal job with the Panthers.
Yeah, you've got a league that's, it's been North Fremont or bust for a very long time, and that's kind of switched up. And, Ryrie, there was a lot of people hyped about Ryrie. So, West Jefferson, they sit in that, I guess that semi-third spot, but, they've got some good wins. They've played, I'm just looking at their schedule. They've played some tough opponents, and, it'll be interesting to see when they go back and play Firth again, because that's kind of a gauntlet of a schedule, right? You go North Fremont, Firth, and then Ryrie, all right in a row. So there's no rest for the weary. But I like West Jefferson there. I still think Ryrie is probably kind of the top dog, maybe going forward. No pun intended, because aren't they the Bulldogs? But
yes,
yeah, it'll be an interesting battle for sure.
Yeah, so I wrote an article about the West Jefferson boys as part of our Idaho boys basketball top 25 daily rankings, which, by the way, you can still check out on our website, IdahoSports.com. Every day I post the new top 25, and I kind of highlight one team or one game. And it's gotten pretty good feedback. If you can get caught in the weeds, debating the rankings, but really, to me, the cool part about it is putting a spotlight on a specific team. That otherwise just doesn't get. Where else is West J getting the love and the publicity this year besides, IdahoSports.com? So it was really fun to write that feature about West J after that win at North Fremont. In that win over North Fremont, Blake Briggs had 21 points. Very quietly, might be a candidate for Nuke Player of the Year. He is really elevated his game to another level. So Blake Briggs had 21 points. Bo Peterson had 11. Jaron Rojas had 8 for West J in that win over North Fremont. And we mentioned, their schedule has been very tough. They lost to American Falls by 4. They lost to Teton by 5. We just got done talking about how good Teton is. And how about this? They played Teton in early December and lost by 17. And then 5 days later, they play Teton again and only lose by 5. So that to me says, okay, West J is pretty good at making adjustments. And after losing to American Falls by 4 the first time around, they win by 13. So they actually beat American Falls the second time they played them. So Coach Croce very good at making adjustments. And so West Jay is a team, yeah, they lost to Firth. We'll see what happens in that rematch, but I'll bet that they come out with a new strategy and a couple of new wrinkles. It'll be interesting to see how they attack that.
And that's like, coaching, you go and play these games, and can you come back and, whatever you change from man to man to zone or whatever, but if you can make adjustments, because 2A, the 2A basketball, it's not like the team's going to dramatically change. It's not like they're going to find a new guy, right? You've got the players, who's there, and just overall 2A is just going to be, there's just a lot of teams in 2A across the state are very intriguing. You'll probably be writing a lot of 2A stories. When I look at that list that you have there now, you've got a lot. And, I think, Bear Lake and Aberdeen are two tough 2A teams that are kind of under the radar too, and man, yeah, there's just 2A is nuts.
Yeah. Bear Lake kind of took it to West Side last night in boys hoops, 66-42. That's 20 plus point margin, 24 point margin of victory for Bear Lake. So yeah, they're kind of very quietly coming around too. I'm not joking, Sean. I looked at this today for 2A basketball statewide. There's like 17 teams that could all get to state. I'm not even joking. Declo and Wendell from District 4, Kellogg, St. Mary's, Orofino, all from the north, all really good teams. From the Nuke, I think any of the top 4, no disrespect to Salmon, but they're just in such a tough league. But Firth, Ryrie, West Jay, North Fremont, all could get in. Bear Lake, Aberdeen, West Side, all from District 5, I think could play their way to state. And then from District 3, Melba, Cole Valley, New Plymouth, Nampa Christian, Ambrose, even Marsing. Their 2A basketball is wide open. There's this one really good team at the top in Melba, right? They're the defending champs. But everybody else, I don't know. It could be any combination of teams. It's going to be really fun to see who gets there.
Yeah, and just kind of picking back up on West Jefferson, they did beat Declo early in January here, so I thought that was a pretty good win, 75-56 over a really good Declo team. So West Jefferson, you always are scared by a team that can come back and beat you a second time kind of differently. It's a very a deadly combination.
Yeah, and the next domino in the Nuke will fall Friday night, Sean. Tomorrow night, Firth takes on Ryrie. So here we go. That could create a log jam and a 3-way tie atop the Nuke if Ryrie can get the win over Firth. So we will see. Let's wrap up at the 1A D2 Rocky Mountain Conference girls basketball. We're getting down to the end of the regular season here, and the Rockland girls continuing to show that they are still the favorite. They finally got to play Mackey, right? All year it's kind of been Rockland, Mackey, and Leadore. Those are the big 3, all kind of competing with one another. And Rockland and Mackey finally met for the first time last Thursday in a conference game. Rockland got the win, 45-38, so a 7-point win, kind of low scoring. And then they just played again Tuesday night in a non-conference game, Sean, and Rockland won that game by 10, 44-34. I don't know. That tells me that it's pretty close between these two teams.
Yeah, and if correct me if I'm wrong, I think we were kind of talking about Mackey a little earlier in the season. Kind of, they had some good wins this year, and we were kind of like, Mackey's pretty good. They're able to get out some wins, but really hard to beat those Bulldogs right now. Yeah, I think just looking at it, Rockland is kind of the team to beat in that conference, and I think Mackey is the second, pretty solid there. But Leadore is a team I wouldn't sleep on.
Yeah, I recently wrote features for both Rockland and Leadore. Leadore, and those were the two teams that got to state last year from the Rocky Mountain Conference. For Leadore, last year it was their first trip to state since like 2000. Wow. So it was quite a drought. That was back when Holly Tyler was playing for Leadore. That was probably before your time, Sean. When did you live in East Idaho? When did you move out here?
My whole life, Brandon. I've always been here. I'm a Pocatello guy for 40 years.
Why did I think you got family in Illinois, and I thought you like grew up?
Everyone, no, just all my family lives in Illinois, but my parents moved out here, and my joke is I'm the only Kane born in Idaho. I've never met another Kane.
All right,
So
man, I had that way off. So I don't know if you remember or not, but Holly Tyler for Ledor was 6'3", which doesn't happen often in girls basketball, and especially doesn't happen at Ledor, which is one of the smaller schools, right? And she's always been a personal favorite of mine because I grew up in Missoula, obviously, and Holly Tyler went on to play for the Montana Lady Grizz, and she was a phenomenal 4-year starter basically for the Lady Grizz. So I knew Holly Tyler as a Montana Lady Grizz long before I knew she was from Ledor. But she was part of that team that got to state in 2000, and then they went through a little drought, and then they got back last year. And I don't think they lost anybody from last year's team. So Ledor is right there in the mix. Mackey has Megan Moore, who's a tremendous post player underneath. She's committed to Idaho State to be a thrower for the Bengals track and field program. But Rockland, man, they're just constant. They've got the Wilson twins. They've got Taylor Boyer. They've got Autumn Farr, which is, if you'll remember, Sean, when you and I did the 1AD2 girls tournament 2 years ago, Rockland had Kearsley Boyer and Ember Farr. Yep. These are their younger sisters, so it's kind of the next generation. They've got, of course, it's not a Rockland team without a couple of Permans. They've got Perman cousins that are both sophomores, the first two players in off the bench. So man, Rockland they look good. They look really good.
Yeah, there is a lot of Permans in Rockland. Yeah. I remember talking to Coach, the boys Rockland coach about that, and he's like, yeah, it's like it's like, I don't know, it was crazy how many there were. Very prominent names. So I mean, they're good for sports in Rockland area for sure.
Yeah, so they're gearing up for their district tournament. 2 teams get to go to state, and there's going to be 3 really good teams competing. So Rockland officially takes first, Mackey takes second, Ledor finishes third in the league standings. So across the board, it's going to be fun to watch all these teams duke it out when district play rolls around here in a couple of weeks. So a lot of good hoops action, Sean. We still got more on the docket this weekend. We'll have no shortage of topics to talk about on next week's episode.
Yeah, I think one that I find kind of interesting is happening tonight is Hillcrest boys versus Madison. Kind of the only team to kind of keep with Madison or with Hillcrest this year has been Madison, and Madison is a good team, and they find ways to win. So I'll be kind of trying to tune into that one tonight. I think that might be one to look at, but we're coming down to the nitty gritty, as they say.
Yeah, we're getting down to the pointy end of the stick here. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun as we sprint to the finish line for sure. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to the East Idaho Prepcast, everybody. Enjoy the competition this weekend. And I know Tiger Grizz Wrestling is this weekend. So that's always a huge deal up in Idaho Falls. So good luck to all the wrestlers that are competing up there this weekend as well. And we'll see you next time. For Sean Kane, I'm Brandon Baney. Thanks for tuning in to the East Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.